Welcome to Three, a show about Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, and part of the Tennis Channel podcast network. I'm Gill with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy. Novak Djokovic made it as far as the final in Paris before losing from a setup to Holger Rune, 7-5 in the fifth. This is the kind of match that we are so used to Novak winning against a younger opponent, lots of tight pressure moments, but it was actually the 19-year-old Rune who was more opportune, more clutch, 3 of 3 on break points for Rune, 2 of 12 on break points for Djokovic. What went wrong for Novak in your eyes, Amy?
This was an exceptionally tight match in terms of the point margins. I think, Joel, Gill, you texted that Novak actually won more points overall. And the interesting thing, I always like to look at the rally links because we know that in the vast majority of matches, whoever wins 0-4 wins the match. Well, that was not the case here because Novak won 0-4 significantly, 67-50, but Rune won 5-8 and 9+. Anything over 4 shots, he won by a margin of 41-30. So that's really where the match was won. And I did think in the pivotal closing arguments of the match, on some longer rallies, that's where Holger got Novak. And I was not wild about the Djokovic strategy. He seemed to be playing a little bit less aggressive, less willing to open up the court on certain shots. There was that put away volley where he had the open court and he went back the other way. It was kind of like he was asking the question of Rune, saying, prove you can do this. And the answer to the question was, I can do this.
Well, and we saw it earlier this year with the teen Carlos Alcaraz. Now we've seen 2 teens make their way into the top 10. And I think Novak didn't know, like, when someone's this young and they're making the hockey stick growth in their game, how good is that really? And obviously the genius of any great player, Novak is unsurpassed in this, is measuring and saying, how many more of those do you have in you? And then I think there came points to Novak, which is the side I'm supposed to attack now? Where am I supposed to go? I mean, I saw sometimes where Novak had a short forehand that he'd normally go down the line with to approach, and then he's going to cross court. I think there's a lot of less of his normal patterns that he was running because he's trying to figure out, who is this guy? Who is this guy? And we watched this. I mean, he beat 5 top 10 players this week, Rune. It's hit the jackpot.
I'm glad you made that point, Joel, because I don't know the answer either. Djokovic said before the match that Rune reminds me of myself, is what Novak said. And I agree in the respect that I don't know if you should go to the forehand or the backhand. I don't know if, his touch isn't bad. His serve isn't bad. His return isn't bad. His movement isn't a problem. This is a very, very complete player, Holger Rune. And obviously, it's nice for Novak to have some tactical focus, to be able to look to something to attack. But I don't really know that clearly exists right now for Rune.
I think Novak in some of those longer rallies did his typical thing, like if Holger was serving, Novak would make the return, neutralize, and then go about the business of trying to open up the court. And I think Rune defended just exceptionally well on Rune's backhand side. So Novak continued to go there. And he was just getting a lot of depth back in the backhand to backhand rallies. So and to Holger's credit, he didn't give up. He double faulted on a match point, I think, and he didn't let anything shake him. So this was, from a mental standpoint, I thought this was a real, welcome to the game kind of thing for Rune.
Yeah, but in his favor. I mean, just incredible. Some of these down the line backhands he was hitting were just amazing. And some of these passing shots that you see Novak trying to figure out transition. You contrast the guy a year ago, we talked about the final versus Medvedev, who'd beaten Novak at the US Open. But again, it's interesting to see over the course of this year with the emergence of Rune and Alcaraz. Hello, Medvedev. Hello, we remember you, and it's just interesting to see Novak again. And I'm going to speak to our three, all these questions they've been asking for 15 years, all these questions that people have to come up with answers in all sorts of ways, whether it's big forehands, big movement, big backhands. I mean, and we're going to be seeing over the next 5 years some quality tennis from a great many players. I'm not saying we're going to see one of them win 15 majors, but the quality of play we're going to see among the top 7, 8 players in the world in the next 7 years is going to be phenomenal. I mean, this Rune is very impressive.
Yeah, Rune and Alcaraz pretty similar in the completeness and how many strengths they have. I also thought that Holger's backhand stood out. I thought it was better than Novak's in the match, which is saying a lot. And mostly that's because not only is the drive really good, really hard and consistent, but the drop shots and the short chips that Rune was able to produce to, I think, kind of gain that small edge in the rallies, in the exchanges by mixing things up very, very effectively, sometimes using the slice to defend as well. That's what you have to do, right? Against Novak. Like if you're just hitting drive after drive after drive and you're giving him rhythm, and on an indoor hard court, you're not taking the ball out of his strike zone, he's not going to miss. He's a machine. You're in so much trouble. So I think what I liked most about Rune's performance is that he really did throw a lot of different things Novak's way. And, you know, he had the sheer power and the sheer firepower. He also had the variety.
They hadn't played since the US Open in 2021, right? And so there's the one where it's like, oh yeah, we played a while ago and you got that set off me, but I pretty much beat you pretty easily. And Novak's gone about his business over the last 14 months being Novak and a great player it is. In the meantime, here's Rune. It's like, whoa, who are you? I mean, have you ever gone a year without playing someone who made an improvement? I mean, and you see them improve. It's like, I mean, the improvement in Rune over the course of this year is just incredible. And I think that took Novak completely by surprise, like particularly once that second set got underway. It's like, wait a second.
Even that US Open match was not a bad match. Rune took a set, I want to say in a tie break, and he cramped. He cramped in that match. And I remember the overall, thing was this kid is cocky. And he was acquitting himself very, very well. And if he hadn't cramped, he might have been onto something. That was sort of the takeaway. So he has improved greatly. I still thought that Novak had the edge in fitness, which is really interesting. Obviously, it didn't, didn't break the match, but there were a couple of points where Rune was huffing and puffing, and Novak was just like, fresh as a daisy. And the chair umpire was very generous with the shot clock. And strategically, Rune did take a warning late in the match, which was really good strategy and very smart. But interesting for the age gap, I still thought that Novak appeared to be a little more fit. Although he did seem to injure himself somewhat, perhaps a little quad pull or something like that, because he called for the trainer.
Well, Novak's been in this situation oodles of times, and here's Rune. There's the literal physical fitness of having played a lot of matches, and this is the most match heavy year of Rune's life. And then there's also the whole adrenaline nerves thing. I mean, what do you think? You think it's going to take Rune 12 or 16 hours to get to sleep after this win? He's going to be, and Novak, it's like, okay, all right, business, get ready, go back, train. This happened, on to the next one. And then and Rune, it's just like, I'm in this whole other airspace now. I just cracked the top 10.
Well, that's been the big thing for Holger, has been the fitness. That's been the problem from day one. He's had to work really hard on it, relaxing during matches because he thought that nerves were kind of an issue, making him cramp in all these big matches.
Right.
I don't know exactly what he figured out, but he seemed to figure it out. It's now 4 straight weeks, 4 straight events rather, where he's made finals, and the gas tank doesn't seem to go. But he's one of those classic 19-year-olds where being 19 doesn't help his fitness. It hurts his fitness, which is normal. Because he's going to get stronger. He'll be stronger when he's 21 than he is now.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. Of course. Well, look at like Alcaraz too, but these guys have so much, they're burning so much fuel. And it's interesting. I mean, Nadal had some of that as a teenager, but Nadal didn't have as versatile a game. And so he was the young grinding defender. And now these guys are playing like, youthful and all court tennis. It reminds you a little bit of Shapovalov a few years ago, although he didn't become as good. But they're just burning fuel and energy and forehands and whacking balls. And it's like, yeah, they got to learn to kind of like manage energy so you can. That doesn't mean conserve it, just manage it so you can play well on Sunday and then play well again on Tuesday, the way we know Novak could.
It's also pretty interesting that I know Holger is using a data guy, Mike James, and I know that Mike has been working with Holger for, I don't know, maybe a year. And Holger has chosen a very wise sort of coaching situation. He's got, his main head coach, and then he's working with Mike under the Muratoglu house. So it's working for him right now. And Novak has his data people. So it was like a real chess match from a tactical standpoint.
Yeah, it's because some great rallies and movements. I mean, that was really a lot of fun tennis. Picked up a lot in the second set.
Yeah, it's a really good team. His mother manages him. His mother's the manager. Lars Christensen, his coach, has developed his game like from 7 years old and is still his coach. And then you have big PMAC in there, who's joined the team in the last couple of weeks, who seems to be just his thing. I feel like when Muratoglu comes to coach someone, he tends to get them to play more aggressively. Serena, Halep, Rune, I feel like his thing is like, I need you to crush the ball and trust yourself and be confident and impose yourself and use your weapons. That seems to be the thing. Now, Joel, are you going to say that it depends on the player and that you wouldn't pigeonhole?
I think, first of all, I think that's what high level tennis is. But I think with Serena, it was a little bit more impose yourself, but you don't have to hit for winners. Make them deal with your ball repeatedly. There's a little difference. I think Halep would be different, but I think that's a good look. Paul Annacone told me this years ago. He said at the lower levels, it's about managing errors, and managing, making sure your weakness isn't too exposed, and then you skills. But at the higher level, it's about maximizing offense. So how do you get whoever that player is, whatever their array is, how do you get them to maximize that thing? The way a coach would say, let's say Tsitsipas, how do we get you to make sure you can play as many big forehands as possible? And how do you construct points? And yeah, and I think that's a completely workable, high-level, world-class approach.
Yep. Dmitry Tursunov also has taken that approach with a lot of his players who have just skyrocketed on the WTA side. We got to address, though, Djokovic's missed opportunities. I don't really have an explanation for it, and I'm curious if Amy, you have any kind of theory about why you can make a very painful montage in this match. Love all in the second set. Djokovic had love 40 to go up an early break in the second set. He had an overhead. He missed a second serve return in the middle of the net. He had a backhand passing shot that looked routine. It's like he doesn't break serve there. He obviously has all the break points as Rune is trying to serve for the match at 6-5 in the third set. Some of those were some poor mistakes by Novak as well. It was a uncharacteristically unclutch match from Djokovic, even though there was a lot of good tennis and he seemed like the better player in a lot of stages. There wasn't the clutchness there.
Well, I think it goes to what the three of us have been talking about for a long time off air, which is what really is a forced error and what's an unforced error. And I think Rune forced a lot of these mistakes, even though in the scorecard they'll go as unforced, with his defense and his particularly on the backhand side, not his speed and not willing to give up in these points. And then, a routine forehand, you suddenly think that you've got to make it more perfect because this guy could get to it, or an overhead. You have to place it just perfectly because this guy, if you don't place it perfectly, he's going to get to it and shove it back down your throat.
Well, the Novak overhead, long-standing for one of the greatest players ever, not quite the A of a greatest player ever. The way, I think of Rafa's overhead, of Pete Sampras. It's interesting how those things happen because when you see, tell me you don't take a little breath when someone throws up a lob to Novak. You know, it's like, and you see sometimes, yeah, and then Rune gets back in the point. Yeah, there's several of that. There's several of that. That one, yeah, is love first game of the second set, love 40. That's the time. But Rune, he covered the court so well. And when he was in those positions, he hit deep shots. I mean, a lot of good shots. And for a court that I'd been told was playing fast by one of my coach sources, it didn't seem so fast. I mean, it's like the way Rune was covering it. I mean, he was on
They
so
played
many
a
shots.
lot of short points, though.
Yeah,
It seemed fast to me. They played a lot of quick bang bang points.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's intriguing. It's intriguing to see the way styles are developing. The styles are developing, and how Rune. You look at both. I'm seeing them as teens, as both Rune and Alcaraz. I mean, this reminds me, if I may, of something I had a chat with Jim Courier 5 years ago. I wrote about this yesterday, and I said how I was about 5 years ago. I was in that view. Well, guys over 30 are filling up the ranks. The game's more physical. It's hard for a teen to make their way in. And how's that going to be? They're going to have to wait and get stronger. And Curry said, no, if they're meant to be great, they're going to be great. And of course, he had Agassi, Chang, and Sampras, all who did great things in their teens. So he had some experience with that. But I think in a bigger picture, he was saying that. And you look at that, like if it shows you, I wrote about it, tennis development is less of a factory, and it's more of like a series of individual artisans scattered around the world. And so along comes someone from Denmark, someone from Spain. It's fascinating.
On my own question, I'll play devil's advocate. I can't give Rune as much credit as that, although I think he played a phenomenal match. On some of these mistakes by Novak, I just think it was one of those rare, 1 out of 10 matches where he didn't have it in some of these moments. And and it's not an explanation other than the fact that you don't play your best match every single match. And I just look at, like, one of the break points that you may remember, Rune's all the way off the court, and Djokovic has one of his best shots, which is the backhand drop shot, right? And he's got tons of open court, and I either hits the bottom of the net or the ball bounces before the net. And I know Rune is fast. I get that he's fast, but that's the kind of thing that he, if you're in Novak's head, you got to make it. You have to make it. And it's weird that he didn't. And I just think it was one of those days.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on that particular point?
The one for me, I don't want to say something and comment on that point if it's not the exact one that I'm thinking about. The one for me was Novak having the open volley, forehand volley to the ad court. And it was late in the match. And instead of just slamming that thing, he tried to go back behind Rune or short angle. And he just, just hit something really flat. And the point continued, and Rune ended up winning the point.
I know the shot you're thinking of. Yeah, and he got kind of.
Let me say it was 3-1 deuce. 3-1 deuce.
Okay.
So Djokovic had the break at this point.
Yeah.
And this is part of the reason he lost it. Go ahead, Joel.
Well, and so this gets to a dialogue that's a fun thing that we've been chatting about a lot, that Amy's been helping me see. So if all errors are situational, then that's important too, is the situation, is the time of it, because he's not going to miss that if he's up 5-1, 30-love, or maybe he will, but the errors occur in situations. Errors occurs in moments. I mean, the awareness of the score and the situation. And so is it forced? Is it unforced? We've talked about this, and it's really fun to think about. I mean, Amy, you've helped me kind of explore this about, is there any such thing as an unforced error? Really? I mean, you're on the court with someone for 90 minutes, and this person has made you aware of their movement and their skill the whole match. Again, my credit to Rune isn't for like saying he's going to beat Novak the next 7 times they play. My credit to him is for just the way he stayed in this match, and this whole year for him has been amazing. He was outside the top 100 when the year started.
Yeah, he had 7 or 8. I tweeted it, and now I'm forgetting which is the exact number. 7 or 8 tour level wins before the year, and he comes in and he's gone on this incredible run. Yeah, to me, if pressure forces a missed overhead or something, or a missed easy volley, and Amy, you're spot on. I think this is the worst shot of the match for Novak, that forehand volley. It was, I don't know what he was doing with that, because it wasn't even a drop volley. He hit it deep to the corner that Rune was recovering from, which was, it was wild. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, if the pressure, like, to me, we can analyze that. We can say this is what caused the unforced error. To me, you still need to put it in a separate bucket from the shot where Rune hit a great inside out forehand and Djokovic was open stance in the corner and tried to make a passing shot and missed. To me, we should separate those two things, but I think we're going to flesh out this conversation in full another time. Amy, is there one more thing you want to add?
Well, this is really just a general observation, and that is that what I see bubbling up with a lot of these young guys is that the volley is starting to come back in vogue. In other words, it's not like it was back in the Sampras era, but if you've got volley skills, that's going to give you a slight advantage over some of the other people like Medvedev who don't have volley skills, which, Joel, you mentioned Medvedev earlier. And I just see like the trend bubbling back up again, and especially in the young guys, that volleying is coming, or at least having that skill is coming back into vogue, maybe trending away from the strictly baseline tennis.
As a result of the questions asked by our three, because it's like, for example, with Novak, my sense is that the volley was an app. I mean, that he learned it. It was something he learned to make better in the middle of his career. But then these younger players think, well, wait a second, I need to do this in the developmental stages. And I think to me, that's 11 to 15 years old. That's when it really has to become more embedded. And you see the way people like Alcaraz and Rune are much more comfortable at the net in that area, where you see with Novak, it's learned, it's studied. He's become a very fine volleyer. We watched him serve and volley in a final last year, but we see, and then when it's tight, kind of still a second language. And that's what I find what's refreshing about this, to bring it to the whole world. Yeah, they're human too. I mean, Novak did. I mean, I think everybody, when they do different things, like I know some people, when they get tight, they go too big. Some people go too small. I go too cute. I go too cute. I know that. And I know, like, that's the type of thing that I would do stupidly, instead of like, okay, high volley, open court, commit, go. But instead, oh, I'm going to be cute here because I don't have enough faith in my free swing, right? Instead of letting it go. Because Novak would never do that. He doesn't do that with his backhand. He doesn't do that with his backhand. He doesn't try to get too cute with his backhand. He knows I can just line it this way. So it's fun. It's interesting how human all these folks are that way.
Someone was in the building in Paris at the match, switching gears here to kind of an external topic. They were in the building. They were filming Novak's box, and they basically saw Uli, the physio, was mixing up Novak's drink, Novak's like electrolyte mixture. And someone next to the right of Uli saw this person filming them and instructed people to block Uli as he was making and mixing the beverage. And there's a lot of questions swirling around, obviously, about, what is there to hide here? And obviously, I think it's something that our audience will be happy to get our take on. So, Amy, I want to give you the floor. What do you think happened there? As if you could try to provide, I guess, your kind of view on what was going on.
Well, you got to understand, the world that I grew up in is innocent until proven guilty. So it doesn't really occur to me that something untoward was happening. But the word that comes to mind is ham-handed, because I think the people around Uli started acting in a really ham-handed way that was completely unnecessary. I doubt Novak would have wanted them to shield in this way. And really call attention to something that didn't necessarily need calling attention to. As long as Novak is passing all the tests, and from what we know, 100% he is. Um, I I do think that a player does have some right to privacy. We don't have to have 100% transparency. That's kind of a buzzword, transparency in today's world. But look, I have a mix that I use, and it has some green tea, and it has a little bit of salt and some sugar and some B vitamins. And I don't want to tell my opponents the name of this product. So why would, Novak want to advertise exactly what his salt mix is either and have the world know? So I do think he has a right to privacy on that front. I just think that those people around were acting in such a bizarre and ham-handed way that it called attention to something that probably doesn't need that much attention.
Yeah, and you look at the whole growth of the player teams. Once upon a time, they had no one watching, and I remember for many years, maybe one person. And then for years, they at Wimbledon, they shared the same box. They'd be sitting right in front of each other. There's Borg's people and there's McEnroe's people, right? Like right behind each other. Now it's like they have like a little pre-qualifying. It's like, did you make it to the round of 16 of the player box? And so it gets to some of this the etiquette of the people who are in there and where they're watching and being protective, and the player, you're right, it was like a business as usual thing. He's mixing a drink, whatever. And then of course we're in the world today where people shoot things, and then people say things, and they wonder, and it's like all this little news making. Yeah. Strange.
So look, first of all, everyone's like, what's in that drink, right? And it's just like, look, what is in that drink? Stuff that enhances performance, just like salt, just like sugar gives you energy. Caffeine blocks the receptors that tell your brain you're tired. That's why, this idea of, is it enhancing? Well, yes, as is Gatorade. So it's a very complex topic as a whole, right? With what athletes put in their body to make themselves better. But yeah, there's very little reason to really assume that anything is going on and this deserves attention, other than the fact that if you are an airline pilot and you are making a safety announcement to your passengers, you should not put too much emphasis on the word unlikely. In other words, when you say in the unlikely case of a water landing, the life vests will appear under your seat. Don't emphasize unlikely. It's going to make everyone uncomfortable. And in this case, everybody shielding the drink mixture was just made some people feel uncomfortable. And by the way, I think the reason it happened, if I were to guess, is because people don't like to be filmed, and some people act funny when they're being filmed. And that's what I think happened here.
Yeah, that is a great analogy. And I would say that I would take it a step further, that these people, and I don't know if they're part of Novak's team. Some of them I didn't even recognize. These people acted in such a way that, to go to your analogy, Gill, it would be like the pilot saying, in the unlikely event. I mean, it was so bad, and I'm actually kind of just embarrassed for those people.
Well, that's why the player and their team should create like an etiquette guide for sitting in the box. It's like, one of the things is basically you should, mostly it's better to be more poker faced than expressive.
Yes.
Yeah, but there should be this whole little rules about that, because it's kind of like this whole thing with these whole, the teams. I think it's fine. I'm not thinking it should be small. I'm thinking it's great. They have these pit crews and they have different people, but they all have to have their kind of role and what they do and how they comport themselves.
Last topic, and then we will wrap things up. I want to talk about this time of year and I guess how we look at this Paris Masters, because there's been a lot of examples in the past of certain things that players have done and runs that they've gone on at the end of the year, such as Jack Sock, who surged into the top 10, Grigor Dimitrov, won the year-end championship, got up to inside the top 5. And even like on the women's side, we saw last year, Annette Kontaveit, this time of year, indoor hard court goes on an absolute tear, the kind we just saw from Holger Rune. So I think we can talk about it first from Rune's perspective and then from Djokovic's perspective. How should we interpret results at this time of year? Should we alter the way that we think about them, Joel?
This time of year to me is what a former pro called the point safari. And it's a little bit like the time for the top players. It's kind of like, if you do well, that's great. If you don't, that's okay too, because it doesn't really hit. No one's going to look back at Nadal and say he never won the Paris Masters. You know, it's like there's a certain kind of like a freebie elective course. However, for the other players, it's a time to gather some points. So and make some track headway. Look at Felix Auger-Aliassime. Look how well he's done this fall, and that's a good time to generate wins. So, but you couldn't ask for something more polarized than how this Paris results, how each of them will look at these results. I mean, really, this has been like a breakthrough, an exclamation point to a breakthrough year. 5 top teners, win a Masters 1000, hit the top 10. Wow. And Novak is like, okay, all right, okay, it's all good. Let's see, what's the deal with Australia? You know what I mean? He's got a whole different vision of it all, and that's all right. They each have their different views and how it's going to be. In Novak, he's looking at the year-end championship, and of course, he hopes to play well and win that. But he's like, it's nothing to get hung about for a player like Novak at this time of year. But for a younger player making way up the ranks, hey, let's do something here.
The vast majority of the season is played outdoors, and despite John McEnroe wanting us to have a Grand Slam indoors or something,
he said that.
I don't know. He wants some sort of big something indoors. I know he has said that before.
Did you ever see McEnroe play indoors?
I haven't.
You'll know why.
Oh, well, I too. I like the elements taken out of it. I like playing it indoors, so I don't have to worry about sunscreen, wind, sun, any of that. I'm a big baby.
I want locust and plague. I want outdoors. I want wind. I want frogs. I want all sorts of things flying around the court.
I think you're spot on, Joel. Nobody is going to remember this if Rune doesn't go on to do something at the Grand Slams. However, these players who are doing well have, comported themselves well, because they're now going to be in better position to do well at the slams because they are going to be able to get higher seeds. So it's like a little hidden thing that could give them a little boost, but the public at large, and even some that are super nerdy tennis fans, aren't going to be talking about this in 3 or 4 months.
I think for Djokovic, he'll look at this post US Open stretch and feel just kind of good about it. Because he's played a ton of good tennis, crazy amount of winning, and he'll look at the Paris final. Wow, that was weird. That got away from me. Disappointing loss, but in the big picture, things are really good. I think Djokovic will have that perspective. For Rune, it feels a little bit different to me than some of the other surprise champions we've had in Paris, and I'll even throw in like Filip Krajinovic made the final. I'll throw in the fact that it's the only Masters that David Ferrer has won, even though it's crazy that he didn't win one on clay because of Nadal being too good. But yeah, Rune, there's not a lot of, and Khachanov, I should add, right? Mm-hmm. Khachanov had the Paris thing.
And Jack Sock.
Yeah, who I mentioned earlier.
And didn't Khachanov beat Djokovic in that one? And who won their match this year that they played? Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of it. Unfortunately, it's a great tournament, but it becomes kind of a footnote.
Yep. I just don't think Rune will actually end up in that group because I can't really poke any holes in what he's doing right now at just 19. Meaning and I'm not talking about results. I'm talking about the game. Like with Khachanov, you had this wild forehand, and you're like, is that going to work? It worked. So I guess it might work, but is that going to work? And then with Sock, you have like a really extreme backhand weakness. Dimitrov, there's the health issues, and we had a lot of sample size. Like, I just don't think Rune is going to really fit into that.
Well, Rune won 3 tournaments this year as a teenager. So there's a whole other arc of impressive. And now what I like is that he's not just winning matches, he's winning tournaments. And I think it's a big thing. I find it, to me, just like at one level, I'm big on year-end number one. I think winning tournaments early in the career is a significant marker of a path you're on, other than that's different than great wins or upsets or runs or quarters or semis. I mean, you're going the distance, you know, and particularly when you look at what this field is, that he beat 5 top teners, and in the first round he fought off match points versus Stan Wawrinka, who I know is past his prime, but still, so 3-time major champion. So it's quite a week.
Next week, we will preview Turin on 3. Novak Djokovic will be there. Rafael Nadal is probable for it. He did not guarantee it, but I would put it at 90%. That's my crystal ball. No Carlos Alcaraz, unfortunately. He has withdrawn. But that'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. We appreciate it if you leave a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. We will see you next time on the next episode of 3.